Good morning and welcome, Patriot Radio News Hour. I'm Joe Jaquint, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group, and welcome to August. Yes, it's the first day of August. Our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. The website at allamericangold.com. And Jason, I'm going to change everything that we were going to talk about. It is now being reported. It had been reported last week. We did not cover it, that Nancy Pelosi was threatening to go to Taiwan. And again, outraging and upsetting the Chinese. No reason to, right? Let's face it. Very similar to the whole Ukraine thing. It just looks like we want to pick a fight, I guess. And here's the funny thing is, it was reported, I want to say yesterday, that she wasn't going. That has now been changed. Apparently, and again, everything's fluid here, but CNBC and a host of others are saying that Nancy Pelosi plans to visit Taiwan on Tuesday and actually meet their lawmaker body on Wednesday. And, of course, China is already up in arms about the whole thing. It's kind of changed the whole marketplace here, Jason, and more aggression. So just to give you an idea, it's not like lawmakers go to Taiwan. Matter of fact, the last time a lawmaker went, China was, well, let me just say this. China wasn't the China that we know today. I want to say it was like mid-90s, I think, was the last time any elected official from the United States has been in Taiwan. I mean, let's face it, we can meet the Taiwanese officials here. We can meet them anywhere. But just looks like more provoked aggression on part of the United States.
Yeah, it's interesting. You hear what China has to say about Taiwan, and then you hear about what the United States government says about Taiwan. You never really hear about what Taiwan thinks about the situation. How come we don't see that story, Joe?
Well, you know what's so funny? Taiwan has no comment.
Isn't that interesting? Maybe they like China.
Maybe they
want to be a part of China. Maybe we're not hearing that story. That's what I always wonder. I always wonder the part of the story they never talk about.
I don't know about that. That's interesting. You know what? I never thought of it that way. But again, no matter what you think, good or bad, and I know a lot of people love us being aggressive and think that, oh, it's fine. You know what? If we want to go to Taiwan, we can go to Taiwan. The world really doesn't work that way, and especially right now, the escalating tensions. I don't see what the gain is here, and I know that. Let's face it. It's been part of China. It's always been part of China. You know, this is where, I guess, the Communist Revolution, when they won, they fled to Taiwan and have been able to kind of hold on there. And again, I just don't understand why this needs to happen when they can meet anywhere, anytime, any place. But apparently she's going to show up, so that should be cause some interesting things. I know already, right? We're moving aircraft carriers, we're moving our battleships, and China's doing the same. And hopefully it's just a bunch of smoke and mirrors. But you know what? All this stuff costs money. I just don't get it.
That's, I guess, the heart of it. Everything costs money, right, Joe? Everybody has to have resources that have to be accounted for. So that's really what it's all about, isn't it? It's all about who gets the cheese, right? Who's going to get their piece of the pie. So you got to follow the money, Joe. That's where it always ends up. Where's the money going?
Yeah, and Nancy Pelosi. Anyway,
Nancy Pelosi.
Right?
She really go?
Just ask her husband, right?
Yeah, I just don't think
maybe she's going to give the Taiwanese some stock tips.
I don't know. Maybe she'll give them pictures of San Francisco and see how that place was run. You know.
Yeah. She's done a wonderful job. Just man, wow. So that is definitely disrupted the marketplace this morning. We'll see how it goes. This is going to be a big week. Gold's up right now. It's off the highs as the Chinese renminbi has kind of fallen off here. Apparently, this is a dollar strengthening. I don't know how this all works, but neither here nor there. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's jobs week, so we'll get the private sector jobs number on Wednesday. Now, that number's been bad for the last couple of months. We'll get jobless claims on Thursday, and then that government jobs number on Friday. And the more weakness in those numbers, the higher gold goes, Jason.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's we'll be looking for it, right? And that's what you do when you hike the rates. It's that's the goal, right, Joe? They want things to come back a little bit.
Slow down.
Yeah, get that inflation down. So that is their number one concern. If the Fed can somehow claim some sort of victory over inflation at some point, then you're right. At some point, you've been talking about lowering the rates and printing the money again. I just don't see it happening very soon. I think all of their attempts to control inflation may be failing at all ends. I saw a video over the weekend, Joe. It really, it's very likely inflation may be getting out of their control, and they're going to have to actually get very aggressive. We'll have to see.
All right, now the Wall Street Journal is now reporting that Nancy Pelosi is definitely coming, and they cited an unnamed source in the in Taiwan. So she's definitely coming. The person said the only variable is whether or not she spends the night. So there you have it. Let's just keep poking the bear. What bad could happen? Just keep poking it. Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back after the break. 800-951-0592. Like a month ago, we had reported that John Deere was moving cab production from a plant in Waterloo, Iowa, to a plant in Mexico. Over the weekend, and I was lucky enough to see it, because they like to hide these things now. U.S. farm equipment maker Deere & Company will be moving production of mower conditioners, which are tractor attachments with rolling disc to cut and crush hay, from a factory in Ottumwa, Iowa, to an existing plant in Mexico. The company told Reuters over the weekend that the number of employees impacted from the move will depend on several factors. Of course, it always does, but looks like about 100 people are going to be shown the door. The plant in Monterey already makes hay and forage attachments, according to John Deere. The move was motivated by a desire to make all of the equipment in that category in the same place. See, that's all. It wasn't motivated by the fact that it was going to be cheaper. It wasn't motivated by the fact that it was going to allow them to make more money. No, it's just they just wanted to make all this in the same place, Jason.
Mexico's gotten suddenly very important recently, with all that's going on. Why ship stuff from China when you can just make it in Mexico? And it's just, and let's face it, China's just going to get more expensive. They got to find their own so-called Africa or somebody where they can start producing their own items for cheaper. And so Mexico could become very important. 500,000 people estimated have moved down to Mexico in the last couple of years since 2020, Joe, since coronavirus. A lot of people moving down.
And you know what's funny about that too, Jason? They have not condemned Russia.
Nope.
They haven't condemned that invasion of Ukraine. Matter of fact, just the opposite. They've been very vocal in that they think that we were the aggressor.
Yeah, one of the things about living in Mexico and some of those communities, they want to make sure that you have $40,000 in your account when you're down there, and then you can just stay. So I think in Mexico is just putting out one simple message.
They do the opposite. Right here, we're like, hey, you come, you can have negative $40,000 in here. Don't worry. And everybody that knows it, think about already. I want to say that we're closing in on 2 million people illegally crossing the border this year. 2 million people.
Right.
Matter of fact, we're gonna far exceed that number. And the vast majority of them come up. They don't have any money, but they already know? Oh, it'll be fine. I'm going to get food stamps. I'm going to get rental assistance. You want to know why rents are so expensive? These people got to live somewhere.
That's right, Joe. I mean, let's face it. I told you I had a friend of mine who's working at a food warehouse, and all he has to do is pull out the holy or moldy-looking bread out of the fresh bread. That's all he does. You talked about bread shipments, but what this guy does, he physically just picks out the bread. He gets $18.50 an hour. So yeah, I would cross the border too. And, you get the good, higher-paying jobs, and you send the money back. And now you got people just moving, companies moving, people moving to Mexico because it's so much cheaper. From what I can tell, the healthcare might even be cheaper and higher quality. So it's
well, the funny part though in Mexico, hey, you want to stay here? Hey, show us you got money.
Put $40,000 in the bank, and you can see Mexico's being very specific, Joe. They're saying bring your money here. That's why they don't condemn Russia. They want everyone to bring their money there. Mexico's not they're not choosing words. They're just saying actions. Bring your money here, and we'll figure it out once you get the money here. It's a smart way to go. It's not just a very businesslike, right?
Yeah, and I don't think people understand the economics of all of this as these people come across the amount of money, the wages that they're earning here, which, let's face it, legally or otherwise, the amount of money they send out. We're one of I think the money from the United States going into Mexico is a big part of their GDP calculations, and all of Central and South America, everywhere. And again, that's just money that doesn't get spent here. It really is. It has a pronounced effect. We talk about the fact that ever since the Fed took us off the gold standard in 1971, I think 1970, it was either 72 or 73, was the last time we ever ran a trade surplus. Right? Think about that. We haven't had a trade surplus really almost as long. Same thing with a budget surplus. I know we had a couple fake ones during the Clinton years. I won't get into that. But the real realities are, since we've gone off of the gold standard completely, Richard Nixon saying that foreign governments could no longer redeem their treasuries and get gold. And we've told the story 1,000 times. We had over 20,000 metric tons. When Nixon closed the gold window, we had about 8,000 tons. And the pace that it was going, we would have been out of gold by about 1973 or 1974. So they cut it off. But that was the last time, really, when you think about when did the decline start happening. I think you can really trace it back, Jason, to that time frame. We've never run a trade surplus. Of course, now no one even talks about surplus. I mean, we run trade deficits it's like $1 trillion trade deficit, and then you get John Deere. Little by little, these companies continue to send jobs elsewhere.
I can't remember the Fed ever using the word surplus as far as I can remember. I don't think that word exists in their dictionary. And I think all that gold that was being repatriated in the 1960s, Joe, that was showing the entire world what was getting ready to happen, and it happened. I mean, the silver started coming out of the money in the 60s here in America. And what did Nixon also do around the time he closed the gold window? He also took all those silver Morgan dollars out of the federal banks and just got rid of them. Says, oh no, we can't have John F. Kennedy monetizing Treasury money. We have a Fed. That's what they're here for, right, Joe? So it was the 60s and the 70s really exposed how bad things were going to get, and I can't believe they strung it along as long as they have to this point today.
Well, I mean, let's face it. I mean, $30 trillion, and really got to count the Fed. $40 trillion, right? $40 trillion goes a long way. Think about, really we're talking about 50 years. We're almost at $1 trillion a year. I think in the next 2 or 3 years we'll get to that number of living beyond our means, and you can only do that for so long. And now if this is right, if we're right, the slowdown appears to be here. And usually what happens when we do that, these deficit numbers blow up, right? And we get really big numbers, and now we got more war drums beating. Nancy Pelosi's little stunt here in Taiwan. Why do I have the feeling, Jason, somehow in the next 90 days we're going to get even more defense spending, right? Some way for them to spend a bunch of money. And it's not just, we always say that the Republicans and the Democrats really are the same. Usually it's the Republicans that like to beat the war drum, but don't be fooled. The Democrats like it just as much.
Absolutely, Joe. I mean, the real trick of it is how did the Fed convince the world that their world reserve currency, the Federal Reserve note, how did they convince the world that it's okay to get to $30 trillion in debt, right? How did they convince the world to be okay with that? That's really the magic trick that they pulled off. Everybody else, these other countries, they should be looking at it, but I guess over the last 30, 40 years, Joe, there's a lot of countries that are suddenly central banked, and these central banks work with each other, and they tell their governments, oh, no, this is the way it's supposed to be. You got this cartel that convinces all of the leaders of these countries, this is how we do better. This is how it's going to work out for us in the end. And Nancy Pelosi, Joe, I mean, it's like a bad reality TV show for the world to watch, right? Isn't that how it feels?
God, it feels like she's been there the whole time, doesn't it? Right?
It feels like we should.
I mean, was she there in 71? I don't know. She's got to be close.
It feels like we should have like half-hour episodes of Nancy in Taiwan. We should.
Right?
There should be a TV show for us to watch because that's what the news is going to be like, right? Nancy in Taiwan.
Yeah, man. So last week we had earnings numbers out of Amazon, and they weren't bad. I mean, now granted, they got lower than all this, but we won't go into what. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. Good enough. But you know what? It took a while to go through Amazon's filings. And according to Zero Hedge, Amazon, obviously one of the largest companies in the world, not only did they reveal that they're hiring at the slowest pace since coronavirus. They actually aren't hiring at all. According to Amazon's filings, Amazon cut over 100,000 employees globally in the June quarter. So that was the quarter that they were reporting earnings on due to the dramatic slowdown since 2001. So in other words, the dramatic slowdown here in 2022. It is the largest workforce cut in a single quarter in the history of the company. The layoffs are part of an increasing trend of protecting the bottom line. Well, listen, this is what happens. It's not a trend. Right, here's the bottom line. Hey, we're starting to bleed money. Well, what do? Well, you got to cut cost. Well, where do you cut cost? Well, you cut it in a few places, right? We got too many warehouses. We reported on that. Amazon's been trying to unload over 10 million square feet of warehouse space. Where else do you cut cost? You lay people off, Jason.
And they got a lot of robots they've been filling those positions with, so they have plenty of robots to fill. It's all bought and paid for.
I wonder, that's a great question. I would love to have seen how many of those. Obviously, did they replace all 100,000 workers with robots? Probably not.
Nope.
But
not yet.
I bet you it's a healthy number.
Joe, why do I feel like it has little to do with how well the company's doing and more about just transferring the company over to robots? Once again, they tell you one story, but is that truth? I rarely believe any of the stories that come out. There's always something else behind it. I'm thinking robots.
So the cuts played a large role in Amazon's recent revenue beat. And again, I don't. Does cutting workers increase their revenue? I don't. Well, maybe their bottom line revenue. So I guess yes. And their rosy profit projections for the third quarter, though it still had a loss of $2 billion in the second quarter. It just tells you the size and scope of Amazon. And apparently, when you lose $2 billion, Wall Street likes it.
I guess that's the modern market, Joe. That doesn't really make sense because there's more behind the scenes. There's always something going on that you find out, like with a FOIA request with the Fed 10 years later. Then you say, oh, that's how that worked. It's always later we figure it out, right?
Yep. And remember, this is a global workforce number. Doesn't break it out, doesn't tell me, what was in the United States, where all these jobs cuts were. But again, it's just another sign. We're looking for signs. We're trying to say, hey, what is going to happen here in the last 5 months of 2022? How, obviously, is it slower? Yes, that's a given. We know that. But how bad is it going to get? That's really what we're debating here. Over the weekend, food pantries and food banks, an indicator in tracking poverty, they were out with a request. They're saying record demand, and they need help. We'll talk about that next. 800-951-0592. Gold is up again today. 1770 here. Up about 5. Silver's up as well. 2030. The Dow, it's up a little bit. Up about 60 points right now. Food banks across the country saying that they have been being hit with record high demand, and they have record low supplies. Food banks from New York, Wisconsin, Ohio, Missouri, Florida, Arkansas, California, and beyond. I mean, it's coast to coast here, saying that they are running out of food and saying that, the summertime is when they have the biggest need. So if you've got some extra food there, maybe a good idea to head down to your local food bank, make a donation, Jason.
Yeah, that's something. If you've got extra to do it. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't have extra, Joe, or there's some people that are trying to increase their stores for the times coming ahead. But there's lots of ways that people can help out. So,
well, one of the things, and again, Wednesday, we don't talk about it enough. Your credit card debt, the minimum payments just jumped again, and a lot of these. A lot of people forget about these little things. Yeah, right. Listen, if you don't have a mortgage, then the interest rate doesn't affect you, right? If you're not buying a house, it doesn't affect you. If you don't have an adjustable rate mortgage, right, it didn't affect your mortgage. An auto loan, well, it only affects you when you got to get a new auto loan. But the one thing that it always affects is those credit card balances. We're talking about minimum payments, Jason, on average that have gone up $200 and $300 a month, and that's just making minimum payments. I'm not talking about paying anything off. That's just to keep you from being reported to the credit card agencies.
That's right, Joe. That's right. There is one other area that if you. If a few of those adjustable rate mortgages are floating around, Joe, which I have a feeling there are some, that it'll affect you there too. The rates are going up, up goes your mortgage payment. But no, Joe, you're exactly right. If you're, this is not a good time to be in debt. I can't tell you how many times we've said, but also everywhere. If you even some of the mass media news are telling you that being in debt in times that are happening right now and in the future is not a good idea. Not a good idea to be in debt. So be very careful when it comes to those credit cards. You don't want to be paying for a taco 20 years from now.
Yeah, that's it. And again, I think that's one of the things that the food banks are saying is, man, we're in this situation where a lot more people are showing up because, hey, you know what? That used to be $100 or $200 extra dollars I spent on food that we can't spend. Another thing they're saying is, and this tends to be true, I think a lot of people that live close to the poverty line, people that have needed maybe to use food banks in the past, they tend to be very generous. Granted, they may not have a lot of money, but they tend to, will make a donation here and there, and the food bank is saying, hey, those are stopped. Those aren't happening anymore.
Yeah, Joe, I've seen the stories about the food banks are getting. I mean, this goes back to even 2021. The food banks slowly emptying out, not having enough for the people coming in to get it. And by the way, the lines are getting longer as the food is getting shorter, and so it's a tough situation, man. How many times have we talked about it, Joe? Standard of living is getting ready to drop. I mean, I like what we covered on the last segment a little bit about Amazon. And how they're trying to figure out how to liquidate workers for profit. But isn't it interesting if the robots are part of this, Joe, in an inflative cycle? You have inflation, Amazon puts robots in because that lowers wage cost, right?
Lowers cost?
But the local business can't do it. Talk about an inflative, this is why I think the whole thing is rigged. I'm thinking this inflation is here on purpose. This is what they wanted to happen. Because we're going to be having a lot of huge mega corporations running a lot more of the market, and these small businesses, Joe. I'm telling you, right? I'm looking around as I'm just driving to work every day. The small business stuff they're just getting hammered hard right now, Joe.
Yeah, and this has been something we've talked about this for a while. Listen, all of these things continue to squeeze small businesses and again their access to money. We talked about J.P. Morgan's balance sheet and the fact that they're saying, hey, guess what? We're not ready to loan money out anymore, right? All these banks, that's kind of the new pattern here with the banks. So think about it, the banks. Hey, they get to make extra money because all the interest rates on the credit cards and all that stuff, and oh, by the way, we're going to tighten lending standards. People's access to money becomes less and less, and all of a sudden, Jason, any little thing, any little expense that comes up, and all of a sudden, a lot of these small businesses, they're like, hey, I was just getting by. They stopped just getting by.
That's right, Joe. I've seen lots of small businesses since 2020 just shut their doors completely, and it seems like there's going to be an apocalypse of that, Joe. So I see a lot of small businesses probably shuttering their doors. I here at the radio station, how many times have I said you can see it and I can hear it from the small businesses. Businesses just not doing well. Everybody's trying to hold on for dear life and try to get through whatever this is, Joe. And I just keep getting this feeling that this is not going to be one big market crash with some sort of reset that kind of fixes whoever survives on the other end. Why do I get the feeling this is going to drag on for many, many years, Joe? Why do I feel like this is going to go through most of this decade, and see who really is the survival of the fittest, which will mostly be these big corporations, Joe?
Yeah, and then I don't know if you saw last week, the Democrats were spending or trying to pass a bill which had already been approved, by the way, a bill to fund veterans. I don't know if you saw Jon Stewart had come out and was blasting all the Republicans for stalling this bill, and of course I knew it, but I want everybody else out there to know it. So this bill, which already had been approved, it already had passed, and sometimes what happens is the House passes a bill, it goes to the Senate. The Senate makes a change, and usually, most times, they're pretty insignificant, but a small little tweak here, a small little tweak there, that it's got to go back to the House, and the House usually says, yep, okay, good to go, let's pass it. What happened this time around, though, is that when it got back to the House, Nancy Pelosi and all of her little friends, they tried to tack on an extra $400 billion of spending. And why do I feel like her now going to Taiwan? One way or another, they're going to get the $400 billion. Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back after the break. 800-951-0592. Like I said, gold is up again today, right now at 1770. A little bit of good news. We did see prices increase. The good news is maybe not as much as we were expecting. Right now, $20 gold is at $21.95. So Friday we're at $21.75. We're now at $21.95. We did see some prices, especially in the AU categories, the graded categories, Jason, moving up very, very strongly as well. We do have some $10 Indians. We don't run Indians very often because they're hard to get. We do have about 50 $10 Indians. You can save $20 today at $1,250 on $10 Indians. Obviously, the $20 gold piece is $21.95 at 800-951-0592. The supply of silver, once again, Jason, remains incredibly tight.
Right, Joe. Right. Anytime we have a special on silver and you're in the market to buy some, I suggest buying regularly as we come on the air. And really, Joe, that's really the best way to do is to put yourself on a budget, kind of like our metals program, and buy a little bit at a time. If you're a monthly guy, buy it every month. Every time Joe comes on and say, "Hey, we got some silver eagles," grab it. If you got some silver $half or some other utility silver on for sale, grab a little bit up every time it comes on, because it doesn't come very often, Joe, and it's just the silver market makes no sense, obviously, and the premiums have been high for a couple of years.
Yeah, and then we're this rate hike cycle. We talked about credit cards. That's a big factor for a lot of consumers. But one of the things that we haven't talked about, this is a big factor for a lot of companies that are struggling to continue on. And as these rates go up, their ability to borrow money, because, we still are loaded with zombie companies who really only get by borrowing more money, kind of like the federal government, right? We just keep borrowing more, right? That's 30 trillion, 31 trillion, 32 trillion, 35 trillion, right? It keeps going up. Their ability, Larry McDonald, he was out over the week, and actually this was on Friday, was saying that the Fed is going to be forced into another pivot. So this is a little different here, right? We already know they're raising rates into a slowdown. Jay Powell finally admitted the slowdown thing on the last rate hike, which got gold moving, right? The Fed, they're not going to keep raising, because they all know, right? The Fed should be raising rates aggressively every meeting between now and probably well into next year. But he's saying for a different reason, not because jobless claims are going up, not because maybe the jobs numbers, jobs created comes way down, but he's saying that underneath the stress underneath the markets, and Jason and I, we've documented this for really decades now, about how the Fed has all these little secretive money programs that keeps a lot of what I'll call the dark underbelly running. He's saying that another Lehman type event, and he's saying that he's talking about indicators globally are at the highest since the last time. So go back to the financial crisis. He says these metrics are approaching those levels. And this was a guy, just to give you an idea, he was a senior trader at Lehman. So, Jason, he's got a pretty good handle on the inside workings, and especially where the risk were at Lehman before it happened.
Right, Joe. The big problem is when one of these monolithic banks or corporations take a big fall, it takes so many others down with them. That's what Lehman Brothers was so bad. Is like everyone was. You remember? It seems hard to remember back there, but how many banks were going to fail? When Bear Stearns and Lehman's were failing, it felt like the whole world was getting ready to collapse with them. Who was the next one? And it didn't really materialize. Why do I get the feeling, Joe, that they'll try to hide it as much as they can? Why do I feel like some of the the really big ones, if they fail, there's nothing you can do. I mean, it's not like if something large scale is going to fail, that another large guy could just buy it up. It's not quite that easy. But these medium and small ones, Joe, they've been failing for a long time. They just get swallowed up by the bigger fish.
Yeah, you know what? And when think about maybe a little more importance. We talked about when Credit Suisse gave their earnings. And a lot of people started speculating, hey, somebody may need to buy out Credit Suisse.
Yep,
or somebody, or, hey, guys, these guys got to raise money or get bought out. And they're too big, right? And I think this is kind of what we're seeing here. And it takes some guys, you need to hear these things. Hey, I was on the inside at Lehman. I saw what the risks were, and he's saying, hey, these risks are as high now as they were then. And of course, the difference is, when we had that financial crisis, the Fed was cutting rates into that crisis. This time, do we got another crisis brewing, but the Fed's got to be raising rates? Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good recipe. Final segment coming up. 800-951-0592. Final segment here, Joe and Jason, Patriot Radio News Hour. We got $10 Indians. This is the female Lady Liberty with the Indian headdress on. Jason, no doubt, would not probably be able to be produced today, right? That would be racist. But just a great design. I think Augusta St. Gaudens designed that one as well. And then I think Bella Pratt did the $5 and the $2.50 Indian. We got them on sale today for $1,250. $20 gold pieces. I thought we'd be $22.15 to $22.25 today. So we got a little reprieve. We'll see how long it lasts. Right now at $21.95. Right now, obviously we don't know. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, anything could happen. But the most likely outcome right now looks like more job softness, which means higher gold prices because they feel like the Fed is going to be less likely to be aggressive with rate hikes. Because of the fact that the jobs market may start showing some weakness. But why do I believe that's just all covered, Jason? Maybe the real reason is because, hey, guess what? We've got several banks that are way too big that have problems, and another Lehman event may be right around the corner.
I think so, Joe. I think the things that we're moving towards in the next months and years is going to be severe. So I got to find the report that I had watched recently. I'm going to have to dig into my files, but in one way or another, Joe, it's almost like it doesn't matter in some ways because all of these corporations seem to own each other. It almost feels like it's all been bought and paid for already, and they just kind of hide it under different company names. Anytime one of these companies gets a bad name, they just change their name. Like let's just say Facebook is now Meta. That's how they do it. They just change the name, and then you always forget about, well, that old corporation was horrible. They were terrible, or they were going to fail. You got BlackRock, you got Vanguard, you got State Street, you got these mega corporations. They have their hands in everything, Joe. So you better believe there's going to be failure, whether it's fake or real. They're going to collapse a few things, cause a lot of stress, fear in the markets, and people will just give it all up, Joe. And this is why you got to keep as much as you can outside that system, Joe.
Yeah, and we've been telling you that for a while now. It's not really a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. There's too much debt out there, and it was just a matter of time when they finally turned the spigot off. And think about how long the spigot's been on. It's really been because of coronavirus, unprecedented. How long the spigot has been left on, and now that it's been turned off, and well, it's not been turned off, but let's just sort of say the supply of money decreasing in the system, and it just makes sense. It's going to cause some of these companies a lot more pain than others, and some of these banks, and I look at these European banks, I look at the Japanese banks. These are the ones that I think are the most vulnerable.
The ones with the most debt, I guess, Joe, right? That's how you control these anybody is with debt. So if you're loaded down heavy with debt, Joe, I'm guessing your days are numbered if you can't handle it.